Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study entitled Kings and Emperors, giving us some background to the rulers behind the scenes of the Bible, particularly the intertestamental period and the New Testament. And today we want to talk about the man who made possible what Paul will call in Galatians chapter 4 the fullness of time. Paul writes in Galatians chapter 4, verse 4, "But when the fullness of time came, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, in order that he might redeem those who were under the law, that we might receive the adoption as sons." The Messiah had to come at a precise moment in history, and God was achieving that precise moment in history. And at the right time, in the fullness of time, Jesus was born. And we know from Luke, the second chapter, that Jesus was born during the reign of Caesar Augustus. It came about in those days that a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that a census should be taken of all the inhabited earth. Jesus was born near the end of Augustus's reign, or the second half, I should say, of Augustus's reign. When we were together last time, or in the previous lessons, we've talked about the Roman occupation, which happened quite peacefully in BC, 63, in 63 BC, when Pompey, for the first triumvirate, which included Crassus and Julius Caesar, when Pompey took the city, took Palestine quite peacefully. Actually, he just occupied it. And we've talked about how the Herods themselves aligned themselves with Rome, continued to pick the correct side in conflicts, and to stay in power as a client state of Rome. Sometimes, because of bad government, the Roman Empire would impose their own procurator, which is what Pontius Pilate was. So when Jesus died during the reign of Tiberius, by the way, when Jesus, whom we will not be talking about much, when Jesus died, there was a Roman governor in Judea, and Herod Antipas, whom we talked about at length, ruled Galilee and Perea. Today we want to talk about Augustus, the man who was emperor when Jesus was born. Augustus and the second triumvirate, Lepidus and Mark Antony and Octavian. This is Augustus's actual name, Octavian. He had several names, but Octavian came to power after Julius Caesar had been assassinated, and the second triumvirate, those loyal to Caesar, had a major battle against the conspirators at Philippi in BC 40. Let me see, I have it written down. Never remember that too. 42. I started to say 43. I'm sorry. In AD 42. And in the same way that Julius Caesar emerged from the first triumvirate as sole ruler, Octavian will emerge from the second triumvirate. He's probably not the horse you would have bet on because he was the youngest. Octavian was the great nephew of Julius Caesar, but Julius Caesar had adopted him as his son and heir because he only had one natural born child, a daughter, who had died in childbirth, and so he needed an heir, and he adopted his niece's son, Octavian. And although he is a man raised in the corridors of power, a man who served in the military, who led troops on the frontier, he was the youngest and least experienced of the other members. You probably would have put your money on Mark Antony, and you would have been wrong had you done so, because Octavian and his forces defeated Mark Antony at the Battle of Actium, and he assumed sole power. And he reigned until about until his death in AD 14. In AD 14, and he ushered in what is known as the Pax Romana, the Peace of Rome, an era that lasted more than 200 years, from 34 BC to 180 AD. It's usually dated from him assuming sole power as Roman emperor to the death of Marcus Aurelius in 180. And this period of more than 200 years, where across the Mediterranean world there was unparalleled, unprecedented peace, prosperity, due process, law and order, uniformity. And so we have a moment in time when Jesus is born, and he is born at the beginning of this time. And he is born, and so the church comes of age the first 100+ years, 150 years, during the time of the Pax Romana, a time when there's increased urbanization, when the seas are safe to navigate, when the bandits on the road, although they're still there, are fewer in number, when cities are not being besieged all the time, and people can concentrate on producing things and making money and trade. It's unparalleled in human history, the Pax Romana, and wasn't really repeated again until the British Empire. That you had this time of just free exchange across cultures. It's the perfect time for Jesus to be born and for the church to come of age during the reign of Augustus, of Octavian, of Augustus Caesar. He was an enormously successful leader. He did everything he could to, on the surface, respect the old institutions of the Senate. Certainly the religious institutions took those very seriously. The Vestal Virgins and the state religion and everything that needed to be respected to preserve the appearance of the old republic. He did, but he also was the absolute power, or at least along with his wife Livia, his third wife Livia. They seem to have been a power couple, not a love match, and she seems to have been behind the scenes doing things he did not approve of, mostly poisoning people, and she may have poisoned him. Anyway, but he did die in AD 14. He was 79 years old, I think, when he died. No, he was 77 years old when he died, but he began this era, and all of the New Testament takes place during the era of the Pax Romana, and for another 50 years, the church is growing at a time when people can travel and people can make money and people can go from town to town, and there is a standardized monetary system. There is a lingua franca, which is not Latin, that's the official language of the court, but common Greek, Koine Greek, that is spoken everywhere. And so we have, in that first 100 years, to the best of our knowledge, Christianity being spread from the British Isles to the Indus Valley, from the Black Sea to the source of the Nile. I mean, that's how far Christianity was able to spread in 100 years, largely because of the stability that was provided it by the Pax Romana, the stability of Rome, or as the New Testament would call it, the fullness of time. Okay, when we're together next time, we're going to talk about Claudius and his decree. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with